We're in the book of Ecclesiastes. These guys have been handing out the notes, so hopefully everybody's got those. If you've been keeping them, you've got a book about as big as mine up here. Okay? We've been going verse by verse through this good work of who? Who wrote this? Solomon, yes, Solomon. A big experiment, is it not? And we're going to get to the last two verses, and he'll give us the conclusion of the whole matter, won't he? But until then, he's giving us a lot of results of things that he has found, things that he's experimented with, things that he found to be not good, things that he has found to be good, and he's just rolling them off point by point by point. Sometimes there's a lot of information, sometimes there's just one verse. And it's hard to outline a book like this, but a very interesting section. We're about to get into 3 or 4 verses that involve the same kind of material, or at least the same subject of material. We're in Ecclesiastes, the 10th chapter, beginning in verse 12. Notice what the text says. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious, but the lips of a fool will swallow up himself. Wow. The Bible is full of what we refer to as contrasts. And oftentimes those contrasts are just put side by side immediately so that we can see them for what they are. And the contrasts oftentimes are pretty bold, are they not? And that's the way it is here. He's contrasting two kinds of people, a wise man and a fool. Do we have that contrast numerous times in Scripture? Oh yeah, that's one contrast that we find over and over again. Notice that he says he's really contrasting not just the wise man and the foolish man, he's contrasting their speech, isn't he? One of their words is gracious, that's the who? The wise man. One of their words is words that will swallow him up. So let's talk about it for just a minute. The words of a wise man's mouth are gracious. I looked up that little word gracious, and Strong defines them like this: kindness, favor. They have a beauty about them. They are pleasant and they are precious. Wow. Brown, Driver, and Briggs defines it as favor, grace, charm, elegance. If you and I are wise people, we can speak with grace, can't we? We can speak with charm. We can speak with eloquence, not to deceive other individuals, but it's just that we have a beautiful vocabulary from which to address others, don't we? On one occasion, the Bible says this about Jesus, Luke 4, verse 22, "And all bare him witness, and wondered at the gracious words which proceeded out of his mouth. And they said, Is not this Joseph's son?" His words were so eloquent, so beautiful, so perfect on that occasion that they couldn't believe that this was the man who was speaking. A carpenter's son. Where was he from? What town? Little town of Nazareth. A little nasty town, a little despised town, a little town that had never had anything really good come from it. Had Jesus been retrained in the rabbinical schools? No. And he was just what? He was just the son of a carpenter, was he not? Just a regular old Joe, just an old working man. And yet all of a sudden this man stands up in the synagogue. And what does he speak? Gracious words, beautiful words, words of unbelievable eloquence on that particular occasion. So if we want to be like Jesus, we need to what? Speak like Jesus, don't we? We need to try to speak gracious words. Let your speech be always with grace, seasoned with salt, that ye may know how to answer every man. Beautiful thought, is it not? But notice this next one. But the lips of a fool will what? Swallow him up. One man said this: the lips of a fool are self-destructive. And that's true, isn't it? He attempts to solve problems, but he only creates more. He attempts to prove he is knowledgeable, but displays his... She likes my second part of these. But displays his ignorance. He tries to increase his favor in the sight of men, but he only brings despite upon himself. The words of a who? The words of a fool. How do you know whether your words are gracious or whether your words are the words of a fool? Okay, they're true. That's one way. Another way is the reaction that you get to those words, is it not? Okay? It's just the way it is. Notice what Psalm 64:8 says. So shall they make their own tongue fall on themselves. Wow. Sometimes you don't have to do much to expose a fool, do you? All you have to do is let him what? Just let him talk, absolutely. Now notice that he continues this to say, he hit the fool in the last part of that verse, and for about 2 more verses, guess who he talks about? The fool and his mouth. And listen to what he has to say. The beginning of the words of his mouth is what? Foolishness. And the end of his talk is mischievous madness. I love that. Man. Solomon elaborates more about the words of a fool. Notice what he says. He sets forth 2 poles, doesn't he? He starts off at the beginning of their speech. And he says, when they start, they manifest what? Foolishness. Just foolishness. And he says, by the time they get to the end of what they have to say, what are they manifesting? Mischievous madness. Man, do we have a lot of fools living in our world today? Oh, it's unbelievable, the fools that we have. And the fools that listen to them, that's right. And some of these individuals are in extremely high, prominent positions in our nation. Did you know that? And so I just listed a few things that are transpiring today in our world and how they began and where they've ended up. Now remember, Solomon says they begin with what? Foolishness. A husband and a wife have a sexual relationship with one another, and there is what is called conception, right? Now, if you are a God-fearer, if you are a person who believes the Bible, if you are a Christian, you would say that what is in the womb of that woman is a what? A baby. That's not what the fool says. That's not what the fool says. Is it? If you don't believe it, go ask them. And they'll say something like that. Well, there's just a fetus in the womb. Need to look up the definition of fetus. Okay, because guess what? They don't know it. Or they'll say something like this. Well, it's really not a human life. It's just what? It's just a blob of cells, a lump of flesh that is in the womb. What'd you call it? An embryo. Another one of them words they don't know what in the world they're talking about. Okay? Who in their right mind talks like that? You know what? You want to know who? The fool. The beginning of a fool's mouth is what? Foolishness. Right? How many genders are there? Oh no, 500. Are you kidding me? Unbelievable. An atheist affirms that there is no God, doesn't he? That's a pretty bold affirmation, isn't it? Has the atheist ever been everywhere? You want to know what? The very place where the atheist has not been may be where God is. Isn't that true? If you ain't been everywhere, you don't know that God isn't out there. But they affirm that, don't they? And they can look at this complex world in which we live. They can look at the human body and they will just affirm what? There is no God. That's the beginning of their mouth, isn't it? A mouth of what? A mouth of foolishness. Yes, sir.
But yet they say words that go all the way back to Genesis 1.
Oh, yeah. All the time, don't they? You know, it's true. We are in a awful sexual revolution in our nation right now. You know it. It seem like we always have been. But as far as the perversion of it all, it's unbelievable, right? And so what they do is they play on people's feelings, right? A man will stand up and he'll say something like this. Well, you know, I have since I've been little, I felt like a woman trapped in a what? I felt like a woman trapped in a man's body. Okay? That's the words of a what? That's the words of a fool. Okay? That's the beginning of it. Okay? So here we have all these statements that are made by fools, right? There's hundreds of genders. A woman can be trapped in a man's body. You're really a woman, but you're just in the wrong body. You know how that happens. That's unbelievable. There is no God, right? And the other one that we made, the abortion. In that womb, it's just a what? There's another word, a zygote. Yeah, just a lump of flesh. Now, what did Solomon say the end is? And the end of his talk is what? Mischievous madness. Here's what's concerning. You know, if it's just their initial statement and that's all that was there and there were no results to their statements, okay, you believe that way if you want to believe that way, right? But you see, it doesn't stop there, folks. There's an end to everything, isn't there? What is the end of the abortionist agenda today? It's not just a lump of flesh in the womb for the first trimester. Now the baby can be born. Did you hear what I just said? The baby can be born. It's after the 9-month period. That little baby's laying on a little table, and mom and doctor can talk about the fate of that little baby. And if they want to kill it, they can kill it. That is pushed by individuals today. It is. They would love for that to be law. Have babies been born early in pregnancy? Oh yeah, I don't know exactly what the earliest is. I didn't look that up. I probably should have. I don't know what the earliest is, but somewhere around 5.5 months, little ones have been born. That's before the 3rd trimester. You know it? And yet today, most individuals who are pro-abortion will argue at least for abortion throughout the entirety of the term. Okay? Has anybody ever heard of partial birth abortion? Okay. Partial birth abortion, they let the baby crown. Okay, so the baby's head is coming out of the womb, and then they will inject a needle or something into the back of the head in order to suck out the brain and kill the baby. So the baby is partially born, and so they call it a partial birth abortion. Now, to us, all those things are gruesome, are they not? You know, I just can't imagine inserting a scaffold into a womb and chopping up a baby. I can't imagine inserting saline into a mother's womb and causing that baby just to wilt up and die because of saline poisoning to that little baby's body. And yet these people they could care less. There's no compunction. There's no guilty conscience. They will stand up and fight for their rights to the end, will they not? It is what? Mischievous madness is what it is. That's what it is. And Solomon talks about it in his book. The end of a fool's mouth is mischievous madness. It's unbelievable. And folks, you and I as Christians cannot support this mess. We can't. Anybody know who Hitler was? Oh, everybody knows who Hitler was, huh? Today, everybody's Hitler. But Hitler was a historical person, was he not? He was the what of Germany? He was the Führer, he was the ruler, he was the dictator of Germany. Right? How many Jews did he kill? The estimate is around 6 million. That's just Jews. There were others. It's almost double that number. Here's the question. Why? Why did he kill those people?
No. They were a scapegoat. It was the easiest way to get the people that he was ruling a scapegoat. He used the Jews, he used the homosexuals, he used the infirm, those individuals that could not give a useful life to society.
Hitler.
That is what Hitler was.
Hitler
Was a little man who he wasn't even born in Germany. This man used a ploy to get into the minds of the German people. He started a race that was not even existent, the Aryan race. Blonde-haired, blue-eyed people.
Now let's stop right there for just a minute. It goes back. Proverbs 23:7. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Exactly.
Adolf Hitler had been thoroughly trained in the principles of evolution.
Exactly.
He was fully committed to the concepts and to all the teachings laid down by Charles Darwin. Okay? Now, some of the thinking of that doctrine is this: the survival of the fittest, right? If you survive, it's because you what? You're the stronger of the people. And so he was out to prove those doctrines, to implement those doctrines, and to make those doctrines true. And so he in his mind decided, these are the weak, we are the strong, and the strongest will what? Will survive. Unbelievable. And it was mere madness, was it not? What that man did. The end of a fool is what? Mischievous madness. Guys, when you start thinking wrong, okay, and you start thinking like a fool, then guess what? The end of that is madness. Now I'm going to tell you something. I've got 8 grandkids. And there are, 7 of them that are 10 years old and below. And you want to know what I don't want you teaching them? That they are gay, that they are trans, and that they need to change their gender. Don't you dare do that. Not to my grandkids. They got mamas and daddies. And their mamas and daddies can take that up. You know that? Don't you teach that to them. They're way too young. If I bring them in here to you and show... Let me just bring little Noah in here. He's about to go into a little preschool next year. He'll be about, 4? And he'll be 5. So that kindergarten age, you're going to teach him he's a transgender at the age of 5 years old, that he needs to start experimenting with his sexuality. And don't tell your parents what we're talking about here. And if you want to bring your girly clothes and wear them at school, we'll help you. If you need to start taking some injections, we'll give them to you. Don't you dare do that to my kids. Folks, it's going on in our society today. And where are we? It is mischievous madness going on in our world. And we act like, oh well, we ought to be screaming from the top of our lungs about these things. You know that? It's anti-God. It is anti-Bible. It is anti-Christian. It is Marxist to the hilt. And they are trying to destroy a godly nation. And we may let it happen, and I sure hope we don't. But it starts with what? Foolish words, crazy words, words that you just can't believe anybody would even say. You know? Can you imagine asking a grown person what the definition of a woman is and they don't know? You don't know what a woman is? I want you to think about that. Okay? A man wants to become a woman, but we don't know what a woman is. So how do you know when you become a woman? See, none of this makes sense. This is total chaos, isn't it? Unbelievable. None of the words of a fool are profitable. None of them benefit the hearers. Every one of their words is vanity. They're empty. They're useless. They're wasted. But notice, some fools are young and inexperienced, aren't they? You'll see them sometimes on our college campuses and elsewhere out protesting and doing all these kind of... They're the young, they're the inexperienced, they don't know. But there's some fools that are old, and they are very ornery individuals, aren't they? They may have developed these ideas when they were young, but now they're implementing them in our society and in the minds of our young people today.
Dick, a thought I have is, those who profess that they have no religion in their lives and they're atheists or agnostic, that is a religion.
Yes.
Because if we are the endpoint of, molecules to man, there should be no morality. It should be like Genesis 6 or in Judges that we do whatever we think is right in our own eyes.
That's right.
In which case, if we see an animal kill their offsprings and eat it, we don't say, oh, that's a very immoral, animal. And so the same should apply to us if that's the case. Yet these people have some type of morality because God gives it to us, because the difference between us is that we are in the likeness of God and spiritual.
Yeah.
So it is a religion, and it is
And then there is that line that's within everybody somewhere, isn't it? A line that you just don't cross anymore. It's just, you got to reach that line with people. But there's a line that even they themselves will eventually draw. Guys, we're living in some very wicked times in our society. And we need to, as Christians, wake up and we need to let people know that we are not for this stuff. We are adamantly opposed to these things. And we do not need to give credence to it. If we do, one of these days we'll wake up and find ourselves as victims of the mischievous madness, okay? And you don't want that. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I forget what it was, and he says, one of these days, Vic, they may come after you. And, I put a lot of posts up about different things, and, all my sermons, all my lessons are out. This is going right out right now on live Facebook. So, you don't think people are monitoring this and listening to this kind of stuff? And I said, well, I'm just a little fish in the pond. Well, the person replied back and said, yeah, but it's easier to deal with the little fish. And it's easier to make an example of the little fish. If they came in here and made an example out of me, and maybe a couple more preachers in Jacksonville, would that scare every preacher and every member of a church in Jacksonville? Oh, yeah. They don't have to do many, just a few. Okay? Kevin?
The only way to stop this is to vote these people out of office who believe it's nonsense.
Oh, absolutely. And stop funding the institutions that they're... The primary place where most of this is always pushed is in colleges, folks. Colleges and universities. If you go back and you look historically, that's where these things are promoted most of the time and where individuals learn this kind of stuff. Somebody else had a hand up? Anybody? Rodney.
Talk a little bit about that cruising in the left-hand lane that our lawmakers here in Florida are saying that cruisers in the left-hand lane are causing all these people that want to pass in the right-hand lane to have crashes. Now, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. The speed limit is in all the lanes is the exact same speed limit.
Supposed to be.
Okay?
Supposed to be.
They're trying to twist this thing in to say it's a passing lane. Well, it is if you're doing the speed limit, passing somebody that's going slower, right? Now, the person that's doing the speed limit in that lane, passing somebody, if it takes them, 10, 15 minutes to pass a few cars, they're saying that person needs to get over.
Oh, yeah.
For somebody who wants to do 80, 90, 100 miles an hour down the interstate.
I had a guy the other day pulled in front of me. I mean, he almost clipped my front bumper. And I was in that left lane like you were talking about. And he was so mad at me. And he pointed for me to get over, into the right lane. And that was the middle lane. And by the time he pointed at me, he was up on the next guy's bumper and had to put his brakes on. And I caught him a football field down at the red light. I just kind of wanted to wave at him. I didn't. What you got to do in those cases is just chill, folks. Do not let road rage get a hold of you. Just keep driving. Let them do their thing. And, All right, Ecclesiastes 10:14. We're going to get off into all kinds of stuff, aren't we? Man. That's what we're doing pretty good. If you don't believe that, go back and listen to me in Revelation. Ecclesiastes 10:14. A fool also, here we are, still talking about a who? A fool. A fool also is full of words. Man. Now the next part gets a little bit interesting when and you ask yourself, what's he talking about? A man cannot tell what shall be and what shall be after him. Who can tell? Wow, let's talk about the first one. A fool's mouth is what? Full of words. I just wrote down some things. He believes he knows a little bit about what? Everything. Doesn't matter what the topic is, he knows a little something about it. Guys, about the only thing I know anything about is religion. Okay? Everything else, I'm numb. Okay? I don't talk about medicine because I don't know nothing. If you don't believe that, ask Kathleen. She's already saying amen back there. Okay, she's doing it. Okay, don't know nothing about it. I don't know anything about building. I don't know anything about tools hardly. Okay, I know there's a flathead and what's that other one? See, I don't even know. Okay, but guess what you don't do? You don't talk about stuff you don't know nothing about, right? But that's not what a fool does. A fool does what? A fool thinks he knows a little bit about everything. His mouth is full of words. He has a word of wisdom on this and a word of wisdom on that. He can educate you if you wanted educated. There is not a subject upon which he cannot pontificate. Boy, those are big words, aren't they? But notice the next point. The problem with the words of a fool is that they're not dependable. That's the problem. A man cannot tell what shall be or what shall be after him. You see, if the words of a fool are applied to life, the question is this: what's going to happen to you? You better watch who you pay attention to. You know that? Because you start listening to a fool, you don't know what in the world is going to happen. And that's what Solomon means by that. A man cannot tell what shall be. If I follow these words, there ain't no telling what's going to happen to me. Or what shall come after me. Notice Solomon asked this question: who can tell? Who can tell? And the answer to that is what? That's about right. God only can He. Man. One of the things that we have to do when we're talking to people is test the person, don't we? We have to test the person. And one of the best tests of a fool's words is to quit listening to his words and start looking at his life. You know? Because the two usually are totally different. They're totally opposite. Okay? Oftentimes a fool's life is in shambles, is it not? Okay? He doesn't have it all together. He make you think that he does, but he doesn't have it all together. And he doesn't even apply oftentimes the very principles that he advocates. You know, he's got all the answers. He's got all the knowledge, and he can say the right things to you, and yet you watch his life, and guess what? That's not the way it is. So when you see those differences, then you know you're dealing with a what? With a fool. Absolutely. Man. 3 verses. Ha ha. Ecclesiastes 10:15. He's not finished. The labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them. Now listen to this. Because he knoweth not how to go into the city. Now Solomon gives us an illustration of people who follow a fool. Okay? Remember, a fool believes he knows everything, doesn't he? He criticizes others. He boasts of his knowledge, his wisdom, and his know-how. And sadly, he oftentimes is so persuasive that he convinces others to follow him, doesn't he? Sometimes you just yield to him because you're sick of what? Sick of hearing his talk. Okay, you think you know it all, you think you know what to do, think you know how to do it, then guess what? You just do it. And so he does. And in this instance, he has planned a trip to a great city. Okay, we're still in the verse. Here the fool is. He's got a trip planned to a great city. He tells his followers he knows the ways, he knows the shortcuts, he knows the dangerous places along the way. He knows it all. I know how to do this. And so everybody gets behind him, don't they? And listen to what Solomon says. The labor of the foolish wearieth every one of them. Those people who get behind him, those people who follow a fool, he'll wear you out, won't he? Soon they find themselves extremely weary on the journey. They face hardships. They come up short on supplies. What should have taken a few days to get there has now turned into a week, a month, a year. When are we going to get there? Oh, just be patient. We'll get there. Unbelievable. The followers learn, he knoweth not how to go where? Into the city. Unbelievable. Guys, you have to be careful who you what? Careful who you follow. Okay? You follow a fool and you may wear yourself out, and you may never get to what? You may never get to your destination. And that's true even what? Eternally as well. Isn't it? As I was thinking about this verse and the other verses that were there, some questions came to my mind, and I just asked myself this, why would a man boast of knowledge that he doesn't have? Why would a person do that? Okay. The next one would be even, why would a man boast of a skill he doesn't possess? And why would a man boast of traits that he really doesn't have? Right? Now that happens all the time, doesn't it? People boast of their, they put themselves out there, they boast to it. It just, to me, it baffles my mind. Okay? Especially, boasting of knowledge that you don't have. How, you know how much knowledge you have, at least I hope you do, and how much little knowledge you have. And, man, why would a person do that? And the only answer is the answer that we give in the last part of the notes. Pride. Pride. That's the only reason a person would do that. A foolish man is usually a man filled with pride and arrogancy. He enjoys the limelight, doesn't he? He loves the praise of men. It fills his heart with joy to be set upon a pedestal, even if he soon falls therefrom. There's no telling how many times some fools have fallen off a pedestal. You know it? But sometimes you fall to your own what? To your own destruction, do you not? Remember we gave the account of Mordecai and Haman. Gallows prepared for Mordecai became the death of old Haman, did it not? Unbelievable. Interesting stuff. Solomon is pretty up to date, isn't he? Larry?
You know, I've been watching the news where they had a shooting in a church. I can't remember where it was. But in all the references to that shooting, it was made to Joel Osteen's church.
Yes.
They never mentioned Christ.
Yep.
It was Joel Osteen's church. And I thought, well, what a fool.
That's the kind of popularity that he has, you know. And, yep. That was just this past week. Sure was. And I think one reason they say that is because that way everybody knows exactly what church they're talking about. You know, I think it's the Lakewood Church is the name of the church. But most people, if you just said the Lakewood Church, they wouldn't know anything about it. But the minute you mention his name, then you know exactly which church they're talking about because he's that popular. You know, it might be, there may be somebody who says the church where Victor preaches. And guess what? They never say the Church of Christ at OceanSide. They say the church where Victor preaches, right? And be talking about us. And people would just know. Oh, yeah, I know where you're talking about now. Okay.
They don't say Victor's church.
Well, they might. You never know. You know, worser things have been said. Any other comments? Way back there in the back.
The more you know that you don't know.
This is true. This is so true. Yeah, and that's true in the Bible especially. You know, the more knowledge you have, the more ignorant you are, or at least the more ignorant you ought to be. Because, folks, this is a divine book, isn't it? You can never glean everything out of this book. And the more you know, the more ignorant you are. You go, wow, there's so much more I need to know. And keep studying. That's all we can do. Thank you.